Whoa! All right, a lot of people are populating the sheet already. Well, that's cool. So this is my fleet carrier money making strategy video. I'm doing it live because I just recorded it like an idiot and realized I made some mistakes. So I want to be able to answer questions. I really wish it wouldn't autoplay videos when I open YouTube to check and make sure that I'm properly streaming. But given the fact that there's 3 people here already, I hope you can hear me. This is what this does. All right, and so. One of the things that your average Elite Dangerous trader will tell you about making money is you buy low and you sell high. And this is correct, but it's a very basic look at how to do things. What I do is I buy minerals on my carrier. And when you buy minerals on a carrier, it can be difficult, especially for a newer player, to kind of understand the range of prices that happen with ores and minerals and all that stuff. So this spreadsheet kind of helps you break that down. Here we have recommended buy price and recommended sell price, and that is calculated based off of a database of prices that I sample daily. Now when I sample the highest price I can find around 11 o'clock Eastern time every day for each one of these minerals. And the point isn't to be exactly tracked like per day. Like I have some basic alerts that appear in my spreadsheet, but the bottom line is I want to know what the highest price looks like every day and what that range in prices. And if you look at the trend chart here, you can see that the prices kind of vary, right? And so Alexandrite has a nice wide variance versus, say, platinum, which has a very flat line where there's not a lot of variance. And that can kind of tell you where you're going to make your money buying and selling ores on your fleet carrier. So the beautiful thing is this requires me to do a little bit of legwork getting these samples every day. And as you can see, I've been pretty diligent about it. I've missed a couple days, but I've filled in what I could. But the bottom line is I develop a range of prices based off of this information. And the cool thing is I've built versions of the spreadsheet that already import that data if you set them up correctly. And there's a setup section here. On this version here, you just gotta link things in. It's all explained, but I'm gonna kind of walk you through it here in this video. These 2 versions here that we're looking at are my copies of all this, and then these 2 versions will be your copies if you decide to use this. The bottom line is with this, you'll be able to import this information from my sheet without having to fill it in yourself, unless you want to, in which case I'll explain to you how to sample the prices yourself. So going to the recommendations, the only legwork you have to do here is to kind of figure out what you want your turnover rate to be. So what that means is turnover rate is from the day you start a cycle and you start buying these ores to the day you sell the final ore. That's a complete cycle, right? That's a complete turnover of your buying and selling. And the rate of your turnover can affect the way you make profits. So let's say you set your Alexandrite as high as possible. This tells me that my price will only be beaten by stations 1% of the time at this price. That means that traders who come and buy the minerals from your carrier aren't going to have any room for profit, which means the higher you set your sell price, the less likely you are to sell it. And so I aim for about 20%. And that's what this number reflects. This means that that the stations are doing better than me 20% of the time in terms of price. And that leaves a range for the trader to make money. And the same thing kind of happens up here when you choose your buy price, right? The lower your buy price, the less likely a miner is to come and drop off their ores at you, because they can always go to a higher station. And so I know that where my price is currently set, I am better than the station prices 50% of the time. And if you look on Anara, you can see the RCB Ronin Star does tend to hang out at the top of the list, which means I'm more visible to miners, which means I'm more likely to get more ores. I could offer more, but the more I offer, the less profit range I have. And so that's kind of the point of all this here, right? So this adjustment number for the buy is in negatives. Minus 100 is the lowest price that Alexandrite has been seen by my spreadsheet. 0% is the average price. Down here, it goes in the opposite direction. 0% is the average price. And you can see now that both are at 0, they match. 100% is the highest price I've ever seen for Alexandrite. And reset that. So I aim for 50%, 20%. Right? And so that means I'm better than stations 50% of the time, which means I fill up relatively quickly. And then I sell a little bit slower, but I sell with a 20% margin where the stations are better. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to just let that stuff sell. Sometimes you might see a higher price and decide to just ship it off your carrier yourself, and you can make more money that way. Down here, you can see the estimated profit based off of the model. And then you can see the max carrier price, which is the highest amount of profit you could expect to make ever if you were to hit one of those rare 1% days where the price is really high. So adjust your range accordingly so that these numbers here and these numbers here are where you want them for your turnover. I recommend 50% and 20%. I do pretty well with that. Since I started record keeping of this little process, I've made about 3 billion credits. That's since June. It's August now, so it's been a couple months. I've made about 3 billion credits in passive profits. That works out to about 40 million in credits a day, which is 8 times better than carrier upkeep. So you're definitely making a profit. Now, again, I know from where I've shared this before, I know like the first gripe I'm going to hear is, well, I can go make 6 bajillion credits, you know, a day doing Thargoid hunting. Well, that's great, but not everybody has the time to go Thargoid hunting, right? Not everybody has the time to play the game the way they want to. One of my squad mates, for example, has decided to start using this sheet because he works just about 12 hours a day. He's got a 2-hour commute back and forth to work, which means he doesn't get a lot of time to himself. And when he does, he can't do much. He can usually go out and maybe do some bounty hunting or whatever, despite his love for the game. Meanwhile, he's got a fleet carrier that is there consuming money that he doesn't want to get rid of because it's cool. It's a fleet carrier. We all want a fleet carrier, right? But, you know, he needs a way to make money. So this is a way where all he has to do is occasionally update this data to reflect what he wants, log in, and set his carrier to do it. And then he doesn't have to log back in until it's time to switch it over. Right? It gives him minimal time in-game while still making money. And that's kind of what this does. So down here we have the cargo percent, cargo distribution. And I'm going to let you know now, this is the rec sheet, right? This is the bread and butter of this whole sheet. Put in the cargo size that you're willing to invest into this operation. To buy ores, you obviously need cargo space. I recommend 15,000 if you're using like all services on your carrier, because that gives you plenty of room to make money. It gives you a couple thousand space for spare tritium for yourself, and it also gives you like 1,000 units of space for bits and bobs and doodads and what have you. Working off of a 15,000 ton carrier reserve, using my 50 to 20% rate, I invest about 7.1 billion credits to make about 2 billion credits, right? That's down here. You can see the capital you need for each individual ore, the profits. There's some extra data down here for like what if scenarios, like what if you just bought all of Muscovite and sold all of Muscovite, or what if you mined it yourself and somebody else unloaded it, or what if you let somebody else mine it and then you unloaded it, etc., etc. That's all this stuff is. It's not super important, but it's there in case you want to see it. Bottom line is you come into this sheet to get your prices, and you adjust those prices based off of the rate at which you want to do better than the stations. That part's the easy part. I mean, it's all kind of easy, right? But it looks more complicated than it is, and that's why we're going through this in this video. So this is how I keep track of what I actually do. Right, and so your bread and butter with this sheet is the overview, which will kind of show you what's going on once you've updated all the information. But basically, you're going to go through setup, and what you're going to do is you're going to download the downloads are in the description, by the way. You're going to go to this sheet, which is my sheet, to get permissions. You need the permissions so that you can get access to the database. Once you have that permission, you're going to go to this sheet, which is going to be your copy of this sheet. And the setup will kind of have all that information in there. The tutorial will kind of give you what I'm telling you in this video in a more crazy way. But your bread and butter is still going to be this rec sheet. And your data is going to come from me through an import range function. So you'll see a reference error here. And you'll go and you'll click on that. And when you do, it'll ask you to allow permission. And then that's when we should get the permission. The permission thing might be a little bit of a pain in the ass. We'll work on that later. But the bottom line is you're going to pull data from my sheet directly to yours. And then you'll set this up. Once that's done, when you get to this sheet, under the setup section, you'll see a spot here, CMMP link, and you'll take you're going to make copies of both of these, by the way. You're going to make your file, make a copy. And you're going to go File, make a copy, and you're going to name them whatever you want. Just make sure you can keep track of them. Save them where you can get to them easily. You're going to take this URL from this sheet and put it here. And if you do that successfully, this should say confirmed. Well, you'll have to click this and allow permissions again, but once you do that, if it's all working the way it's supposed to, this will say confirmed. And that's just going to pull some data over from this to assist with this sheet, right? And so this sheet consists of a number of things. We got the report. First thing you're going to do is you're going to go into the report and put in the reserved cargo space again, so 15,000. It recalculates everything for this sheet, so don't worry about that. But you're going to put that in on this sheet. And then you're going to go to, you're going to have your overview, and I'm going to show you what a more complete one looks like. This is an empty one. So we got your overview, which kind of shows you, the current demand that you have on your carrier, the current investment you have, what's remaining of that investment based off of what you've sold, the current supply that you have to sell, current returns, expected returns. Returns are, so, you're looking to make a profit over what you invested, right? So return is the total money you get back once you sell everything you bought. It should be a bigger number than your investment if you're making a profit. And so return minus investment is your profit, which will be your total profit down here. Now, here, don't be alarmed that this is red and that these are all red, because these won't fill in until you completely sell out everything that you've got in there. But for what you have sold, you can see, the profit for each one of those units, right? Down here is estimates based off of data pulled from the model and like what it's kind of recommending to you. And this is kind of what you can expect to do based off of that information if you follow the model sheet. Records are where you manually take in the logs, which I'm going to show you the logs in a second. You manually, once a cycle is complete, once you've completely bought and completely sold, you take all the data from the logs and you put it in here, and it just kind of helps keep track of things. So as you can see, the first record I started with record keeping was June 12th. And since June 12th, I've made 3 billion credits, so on and so forth, right? And then you can see like your profits per things. This feeds the analysis sheet, which can kind of give you some basic information about like what you've done for each ore. And most importantly, this right here, average profit per day based off of turnover rates and profits, which tells me that I make about 43 million credits a day, with muscovite and painite being the big sellers. And you can see like painite and muscovite are pretty high per ton, right? And so is grandita, but especially void opals. But void opals takes a while to turn over, and so I only make about 6.4 million credits a day. So you can kind of get an idea. In future versions of all of this, I'm probably going to update the carrier mineral mining model. It's so hard to say that. I'm going to update that sheet so that it reflects turnover rates for ores instead of profit per ton. But for now, this works, and you can kind of adjust according to this by looking at this information. Now we get to the legwork of this sheet. And so these are the logs that you keep for your transactions. So this is the current state of my carrier. I'm in a buying state for this ore. I've got a demand of 154 left. And basically, every day, I go to Inara, I update my commander sheet. I go to my fleet carrier and I look at my market, and I can see, oh, you know, yesterday or today my demand is 154. Well, maybe tomorrow that demand will show 101 on an ARA, right? I don't even have to log into the game. I can just go to an ARA. So I'll put in tomorrow's date. That's not tomorrow's date, but you know, equals 100 or 154. That's my current demand minus 101. That means I sold 53. If you can do the math in your head, just do the math in your head. But I sold 53 units at that price, right? 880, and it adds that in, and it basically helps keep track of the data, right? None of that's real, so I'm going to erase it. I'm going to show you a blank sheet. So Paynite and Rod Plumside I just sold out on, so I'm about to start a new cycle on them. So cycle start date is when you start all together. So we'll put in today's date. Buying, I'm going to start buying today, so that's today's date. Quantity, I'm going to go by what it recommends here. Now this recommended units is going to be a little bit different than the model's recommended units, and the reason for that is, let me show you. This is a base recommendation, assuming that you're going to be in business with all of these things. This recommendation factors in whether or not you've turned off an ore. So for example, I'm not doing any business with platinum because platinum just doesn't make any money. And so, whereas the model might recommend I buy 102 units, I've turned it off, and now it only recommends 0 units, right? So I can turn it on. There's another one off too, so it's not going to be 102. But let's say I switch this to buying 104, right? And that 2 space comes from the distribution of space from one that's not being bought. By adjusting that, by the way, I have changed Paynite to now recommend. So it's always going to try to keep your carrier at your recommended reserve. If you have money in the hold or in the hold, so let's just add. No, this is platinum. We want Paynite. Let's just add. Let's say I go and mine 100 units. It's now going to recommend only that many units, and it's also by the way, this is the mine spot. If you mine any of these ores yourself, put that in here. That will fix your demand, and that will consider that profit as mined profit and use the mining profit range instead of the range from the sheet. So it will accurately track how much you've mined. So if you mine anything, put it in that spot. We're going to put in the amount that I'm going to buy on my carrier. And then the reason we got to put another price in here, even though we have this recommendation, is because the recommendation works off of one set of math. Elite Dangerous works on another set of math where it uses like a percentage based off of the average price in the game, which is all stations averaged, to set the price. So you'll never get to that exact price. I recommend for your buying price, you set just like 1% ahead of this. So if it's like 265, 890, go for that. So we'll say that's the price in game that I can set it at, right? 265, 890. That now puts in the demand down here. I'm going to put the buy price in again over here because this number is a reference for me that tells me that this is the actual current price that I'm buying at. This is just where I set the purchase order initially on the carrier. Let's say in 2 weeks, Paynite's not doing so good for whatever reason, and I want to change the price. I'm going to leave this the same as a record. Good day, Cat. How you doing? And then I'm going to update this so that I know what my current price is for when I enter the things into the log. That's why you're putting that price in twice. One's a reference to the record, right? And so let's say now I have this demand. Let's say I check my Anora tomorrow and I see that I've sold some Paynite, right? My demand is different than it is on this spreadsheet. So let's say my demand is 1980 tomorrow. Today's date. I suck at arithmetic, so I can just put in equals 2057, which is that current demand there, right? Minus the 1980 that it shows, and that tells me I sold, or I bought 77 units. And I can see my price up at the top left corner, 265, 890. Boom, I spent that much money. That's my investment. So on and so forth. let's say we switch to the sell cycle. You do the same thing for the sell cycle, right? Somebody came along and bought all 77 of those ores today at what's the recommended sell price? 415. It's not going to be exact, but 529. Boom! I can see how much profit I made. All that. It's all just record keeping, right? You're just filling in the data as it comes along. Using that, if you keep up on that, I'm going to empty this because this isn't real data. This is just example. And I got to fill this out today when I get in game and mess with my carrier. Filling all that in just helps you keep track with your records, and you can see all the profit you made. So the links are in the description to get your own copies of it. Like I said, the basics are you're going to go and get permission from MySheet to view it. You're going to make your own copy of the public model. So file, make a copy. You're going to make your own copy of the mineral trade log. File, make a copy. When you do that, you're going to go into your copy of the model. You're going to go to PriceDB, and you're going to click here where it says import range. And you're going to ask for permission through this sheet to get this imported range of data so you don't have to do it yourself. If you want to sample your own prices, say you don't trust my model and you don't want to, and you want to sample your own prices to keep track of it on your own, maybe you just want to do it for fun, right? I check it once a day. You look for the highest price. You want to make sure certain conditions are set up. There's a certain demand. There's a certain amount of time that the price has been visible. Things like that. There's a bit of filtering to the data. And then you put in the highest price you find under those conditions every day, along with the date. If you don't want to do that, just keep my import range, get the permissions. There might be, like I said, I'm new to the import range function, and I've tested it a bit with some of my squad mates, but like for a more open public version, there might be some problems with the permissions. We'll get that worked out. Just message me or leave a comment, and we'll get that fixed for you. But it should automatically import all this data into the database for you, so you don't have to do it yourself. The only thing you have to do is make the set adjustments on your recommended sheet, get your prices, recommendations, and then start buying and trading minerals, right? And then you use this sheet to keep track of it. With this sheet, like I said before, you're going to go to your model, copy the link, and you're going to paste the link into this spot here, and then just click here and allow permission from your other sheet. And if you did that correctly, this should say confirmed. And once that's confirmed, that's just going to pull data into this sheet. You can see all this stuff is not available because there's no link in it right now. But if it works correctly, when you go to like your Alexandrite sheet, for example, you'll have the recommendations from your model. And that's the spreadsheet in a nutshell. Now, I've been talking to basically nobody this entire time because I wanted to make a video. I tried making a video earlier and I screwed up. And so I just decided to do it live, right? So I see that there's like 2 of you in there. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I am going to kill the video here, though, unless somebody's got a question or wants to check this out. Happy hunting. Happy mineral